No, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh.
Sorry, everyone. I'm going to give the abbreviated opening. Welcome to the Wells Fargo Verizon second SPRC meeting. We are going to do a round of introductions, but the long and short of it is essentially, please keep your cameras off until it's time for comment. If you have public comment that you'd like to provide tonight, please just put your name in the chat box and we will make sure that you are heard this evening based on the time that we have allotted for this meeting. And please do not use the chat box for any purposes other than to put your name in it or for logistical reasons, okay? We have done a quick little round of introductions here. We'll do it again just for everyone to know who's at the table. Devanshi Patel, Planning Commission.
David Howell, Forestry and Natural Resources.
Jim Lantelme, Planning Commission.
Excuse me, Gary Fuca, Verizon.
Barnes Lawson, I represent Verizon.
Carrie Thompson, the Climate Change, Energy and Environment Commission.
Bill Gearhart, London Village.
Alexander Janeski, Ashton Heights.
Collier Cook, Ballston, Virginia Square.
Robert Gibson, Arlington County DES.
Greg Van Wee with Jefferson Apartment Group, one of the applicants.
Sarah Mariska, representing Jefferson Apartment Group.
Mike Gill with Akridge, one of the applicants.
Peter Schultz, Arlington Current Planning. Sorry.
Emma Martin, Planning Department. And then online, Aaron, are you here with a civic association?
Yeah, hi, I'm Aaron Schutz representing Lion Park Civic Association. Happy to be here.
We also have a hand raised.
And yes, who do we have?
Sarah.
Oh, yes, Sarah Rubakova, representative from the Housing Commission.
Wonderful, thank you.
I don't know. Call for anyone else who's on the SPRC.
Anybody who we've not heard from yet that's on our roster for the SPRC tonight? Okay, thank you. All right, so tonight, I hope everybody got a chance to review the agenda. First thing on our agenda is the staff presentation.
Yeah, it was all up before, and then we had that problem. I'm Peter Schultz from the Arlington County Planning Division. You've seen these slides hopefully online just to catch up on our presentations here. This is our agenda for tonight to go over pretty much everything else on the SPRC agenda. Some of our job has been made easier by one of the major sticking points that the developer will tell you has been eliminated from the plan. And some other staff concerns have also been addressed. You can see through their presentation. I will let them do the pretty pictures, but they will no longer be applying for a use permit for a drive-through ATM. So our applications are down to a GLUP amendment and a new site plan. I'm sorry?
Do you want to iconify the,
Yeah.
just so everyone can see?
Yeah. This is our process to date. This is our second hybrid SPRC. The first one was architecture and site layout with much of the discussion around the appropriateness of a drive-through ATM in this location. We have received some revised plans showing the removal of the ATM, and the developer has acknowledged this won't be the last round of revised plans. But a few staff issues that we've already raised with the applicant include an amenity space that seems to exceed the maximum building height, so we need to get some clarification on that. Work with the developer on the landscaping of the Irving Street adjacent to the plaza. Staff and the developer have worked together. We'll talk during the landscape section of this discussion about some ideas we have. And we have expressed to them our desire that the stormwater vault and Dominion power vaults be taken out of 10th Road and moved at least behind the curb. With regards to transportation, the sector plan and the zoning ordinance, which codifies many of the recommendations of the sector plan, are going to be our recommendations. I will not read these off, but the developer has refined a bit their parking plan. As to remind everyone, this is genuinely a mixed-use building with both residential, retail, and office uses. And as a reminder, the Verizon building is going to remain. So the Verizon does need parking spaces, and they request 9 parking spaces and their existing loading space. Developers asking for modifications from parking zoning ordinance parking regulations for all the residential, retail, and office, and we will analyze that through the office parking study adopted by the county board in 2013, the off-street parking guidelines for multifamily residential projects, and in general, good planning practice. And as we all know, the developer is proposing a new public street called 10th Road North, which is called for in the Clarendon sector plan. In the interest of time, I will not read all this, but the sector plan, and this is also codified in the zoning ordinance, sets out the expectations for what streetscapes shall be in this neighborhood, in general cross sections for streets surrounding the site. In the most recent update of the Clarendon sector plan, I do want to point out that Irving Street here does not actually have a streetscape recommendation. Developer and staff have gone through kind of several ideas of what can be done here. They have 14 feet, as you'll see next, of their own property setback from the Irving Street Plaza right-of-way. And so how can the developer's property interact with the right now unknown future development of that Irving Street Plaza will be an item we would like to discuss tonight, among many other things. With regards to landscaping and sustainability, staff's biggest concern right now is to figure out what the best way to treat this 14-foot setback area here. So this area from this dark line here to the face of the building is property that the developer owns. We know about the constraints that there are significant Verizon utilities underneath this site that had an easement dating back several decades. It's my understanding these utilities are quite significant, hard, if not impossible to remove, and maybe very shallow. Right now, the developer, talking with staff, we thought maybe plant street trees here. However, finding out in further discussions, because of those utility conflicts, these would need to put full street trees, need to be 30-inch high planters adjacent to this building, which creates problems, first of all, for permeability to the future plaza. Just to remind everyone, the future plaza is going to be designed, led by the Department of Parks and Recreation. So we don't know what the plaza will look like yet, but of course we want both spaces to work together. So we've been, this is not going to be the final state. We have been working with the developer on getting for instance, a wider shy zone in front of the, you see here, a new entrance added to the bank. That was another one of staff's comments, that there was no entrance to the bank on Irving Street. So exploring ideas of how the developer can plant trees, which are good, as well as help meet the tree canopy requirements and just good urban design practice in general, while not inhibiting problems with this plaza. So more to come, and we would definitely appreciate people's input on this. With regard to sustainability, I'll let the developer explain their plan, but the sector plan recommendation just says generally should be sustainable. They don't get into very huge details, but as you know, there's the green building incentive policy that governs these items. The developer is asking for a 0.45 bonus, which is one of the middle level bonus. For those of you not familiar with the county's LEED program, it's not just LEED, it is also county specific guidelines and adapted. So we've kind of adapted these things, Energy Star, to ourselves, to our needs to help meet the community energy plan goal and other climate change goals. So the developer can go into further detail about how they're going to meet this area 0.45 request here. This melds into community benefits. Community benefits, of course, at this stage, the community review process for this site plan is not yet concluded. All we can say is the developer needs to earn additional density and building height above the base. The Clarendon sector plan does anticipate for that. And there's many different ways they can do that through provisions for public spaces or public facilities, on-site or off-site affordable dwelling units, historic preservation purposes, green building techniques, off-site transportation improvements. And right now, we're just purely at the exploration stage. The site plan review committee input would be welcomed, but eventually this is something that the county manager signs off on, and we'll have a complete package by the Transportation Commission hearing, whenever that is. And speaking of future commissions, I am going to say no earlier than July for these commission meetings. That's because we have this final meeting. The developer knows they have some additional wrap-up work to do, and a final set of plans that staff will need to review carefully. So I don't anticipate it going to any commission meetings or the county board earlier than July. So this is our webpage and contacts, and I please note the changed email address for the SPRC chair. This ends staff's presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. So next we are going to have the applicant's presentation.
Yeah, you can drive.
You're welcome to drive.
I'll bring it up.
Okay.
I'll bring it up. Let me share it. I can start.
Just to let you know, we have one more Thank you, Peter, and thank you everyone for attending in person and virtually. We are excited to be here. We have a great team. Greg and Mike are here in the room with us, but then we have our team of experts also attending. So hopefully if there are questions or comments, we can answer them or at least hear the feedback so we can think about incorporating those details. High level, I think the big news item is that after the feedback we received during the online engagement, as well as at the first SPRC meeting, we did remove the drive-through lane in the rear of the building. In its place, we have added 2 walk-up ATMs, which I will show on some of our renderings. And again, in lieu of the drive-through ATM, we have added some short-term parking on the north side of 10th Road that would be for bank usage as well as for other retail tenants. We had some discussion previously about making sure that we are accommodating spaces for Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, pick up and drop off. So we have modified our lay-by lane on Hudson Street to account for that. We have, as Peter alluded to, been refining our streetscape around the Verizon building to the extent we can. We do have existing conditions that we are working around and a number of utilities, but we are trying to make it better as much as we possibly can. And then we also have done some redesign of the loading, which I will walk through as well. This, just for some background, is where we were at the last SPRC meeting. A couple of things that I will highlight is that our loading was bifurcated by the access to our garage, and then we had loading in this location, loading here. So that, I think, is one change that visually you'll see in the next slide. Just to walk through in a little bit of detail what we have done, as I mentioned, in the rear here was where the location of the ATM was. We've modified that. In lieu of the drive-through, we now have these short-term parking spaces. We now also have a walk-up ATM proposed in the rear of the building and a walk-up ATM proposed in the front of the building, and that we think will enhance the vibrancy and the activity on both sides of the building. We also have modified the lay-by in this location, as I mentioned. We have continued to refine the streetscape all around the building. And then specifically, we have tried to improve the streetscape in this vicinity by making sure that there is a landscape strip, adequate sidewalk. We are limited in this location, and we can go into more detail, but we are retaining the Verizon loading dock in its configuration. So we are improving everything north of the Verizon loading dock to Washington Boulevard, but much of the infrastructure in this location inhibits some changes. Similarly, along Irving Street, We have some infrastructure, and we are hoping to improve landscaping in this vicinity.
Sorry to interrupt, but the slides are not advancing on the PowerPoint.
No one's seeing the slides.
Okay, nobody's seeing this.
Yeah, they're not advancing, so it's just for you. You're gonna have to exit presenter mode. We can see that slide now. I just have to.
And could you go to full screen too, please?
Hold on, let's try again.
Thanks, Christine, for working on it.
Just share probably.
It does have a PowerPoint live. That's not your.
Peter, do you know where that?
Yeah, go to window. You go to window. I've never tried this PowerPoint.
Any luck now?
We're good.
Great. Well, let me just quickly run through. I think we summarized this. Old plan for reference, new plan for reference, and then just to walk through some of the changes we were just discussing. This is the short-term parking in the rear in lieu of the drive-through. We have an ATM in the front of the building, an ATM in the rear of the building. We do have a lay-by lane adjacent to our residential entry on the eastern side of the building. We've improved the streetscape as much as we possibly can along North Hudson Street, though we are limited. This location here, which hopefully everyone has now seen, is the Verizon loading dock. And then similarly, we are trying to improve the accessibility and the quality of this streetscape on Irving Street, but we are also in this location limited by underground infrastructure and infrastructure that serves the Verizon building that cannot be touched. As staff mentioned, we continually refine and discuss the landscaping adjacent to the plaza. We are working with the county's different interest groups that we're trying to accomplish in terms of how we improve that in the long term in concert with the parks planning process. So we're trying to figure that out, and so certainly we welcome feedback this evening. This is a view of the building from Washington Boulevard, from Clarendon Circle roughly. I'm trying to highlight the ATM in the front and then the ATM in the back. This is a view from Irving facing the new 10th Road. You'll also see here the short-term parking spaces in this location in lieu of the drive-up ATM. This is a view of New 10th Road from North Hudson Street, where we've tried to consolidate the service functions in the rear. This is a view of our residential lobby from North Hudson Street on the eastern side of the building. And then we do have Jim Watson on the line, who I think is going to take the next couple of slides to walk through parking, loading, and some of the transportation ratios. And hopefully Jim is on the line and seeing the slide.
I am here. Thank you, Sarah. Yes, as we've just mentioned, just from a transportation perspective, I think we've touched on, the addition of 10th Road there. Sarah's mentioned the 3 spaces, on-street spaces there on 10th Road, as well as the lay-by on Hudson. You can see here with the blue arrow where the parking garage entrance is going to be from 10th, that goes down and serves our 234 spaces. We've got 4 loading spaces there that's just adjacent to the parking entrance. And the bike parking is planned surrounding the building. I know they're a little small here, but there are several class 3 bike racks surrounding the building, and as well as we'll have class 1 bike parking, as well as vehicular parking below grade in the building. Sarah, if you want to go to the next slide. This is just kind of a rundown on how the parking and loading is laying out. We've got, of the 234 spaces, 15 are slated for retail. That's about 1 per 2,084 square feet. 70 spaces laid out for office, which is about 1 per 945 square feet. 138 residential spaces, 0.57 per unit, and 11 visitor spaces. This does not include the 9 spaces that are going to remain for Verizon just south of 10th Road. Looking at bike parking for the long-term parking that'll be within the building, class 1, we're required to have 108. We're planned to provide 122. And then surrounding the building that I noted just a moment ago, we're required to have 12 class 3 short-term spaces. We intend to provide 20. And then when we move on to the loading, we're intending to provide 4 spaces. So you can see there's a modification requested there. So that we're looking to consolidate one of those to get to the 4 spaces. And that's generally the rundown on just transportation and parking.
Thanks, Jim. I'm going to talk, these are very challenging to read sections. We can go into details if folks want us to, but in the interest of time, I was going to summarize some of the landscaping and sustainability components. And if we do want to go back and walk through specific details, we are happy to do that. Bong Sean is our landscape architect with Lee & Associates, and she is on the line. So hopefully she can correct me if I say anything wildly inaccurate. But just to walk through some of the open spaces and the landscaping that we are proposing, we do have a number of improved areas on the building, which we have thought of as a series of accessible terraces with roof planting. There's a lot of different plantings, and we are trying to provide a number of different gathering spaces at different scales. On the roof, we do have a north-facing space as well as a south-facing space, with the north-facing space having seating and grill stations, with the south having a pool deck and some smaller gathering spaces. And then again, as I mentioned, we do have some outdoor spaces along in these areas that I'm highlighting right now. Around the building, I just want to highlight a few things. One is that in working with staff, we have allowed for about 20 feet of sidewalk in this area to allow for some better bicycle movement than currently exist in this location, with the balance of the streetscape having 12 feet of sidewalk along Washington Boulevard in conformance with the sector plan. As I mentioned, we do have 8 feet of sidewalk along North Hudson Street, and then we do have the lay-by in that location. On 10th Road, we have a couple of different conditions. Along the north side of 10th Road, we do have a very wide sidewalk with 12 feet provided in a number of locations, along as some bioretention, tree opening, and street trees in this location, all of which have been facilitated by the removal of the driveway over the prior plan. On the south side, adjacent to the existing Verizon building, where we are working with that existing structure, we are proposing a 6-foot wide tree planting strip as well as a 6-foot wide sidewalk. And then on North Irving, as I mentioned, we are working with staff to adjust whether what we do or not do, but at the moment we are proposing above grade planters with trees, and we are continuing to refine that concept. And then next to the Verizon building, there is an existing landscape strip that's just shy of 4 feet, as well as a 6-foot sidewalk. And then we are proposing some additional plantings adjacent to the building to enhance that. We also are proposing to retain some mature trees adjacent to the building to that we know that some folks have contacted us and said how lovely they are, and we are retaining those trees. In terms of sustainability, as Peter mentioned, we are proposing LEED Gold certification with the 0.45 FAR bonus. And as part of that, we are proposing about a 25% performance improvement over baseline. We do have our green building sustainability consultants on the line, and we are all happy to address questions that folks might have. In terms of community benefits, I think Peter gave a very good summary, but we are proposing a utility fund contribution, public art contribution, transportation demand management plan, Arlington County commuter service contribution, affordable housing contribution, and then we are really working to improve the streetscapes around the building and adjacent to an existing building. As I mentioned, we are proposing LEED Gold certification, And the Verizon building is actually included on the historic resources inventory as a very important building, which will be preserved as part of this application. And then what we have been very, I think it's very important, and I think the sector plan does as well, is the construction of a new connection, which is the new 10th Road North. Just to talk a little bit about phasing, I think we've talked about this at the first SPRC, but part of this kind of challenge is that we are retaining the Wells Fargo Bank, ensuring that they do not have any lapse in operation and constructing a new branch. So that would be phase one, allow the bank to remain in this location, construct a new bank branch. Once that has been provided to Wells Fargo and they are open, then in phase two, the balance of the 12-story building, new 10th and the streetscape improvements would be constructed, as illustrated in this final slide. We can provide details on anything and everything, but wanted to keep things brief.
Thank you. So we are, just by way of our agenda, we're going to be speaking about transportation, landscaping and sustainability, community benefits, construction phasing, and are there any other topics that don't fit within those buckets that we want to add to the list? Yes, sir.
I assume lighting comes into all this with transportation and sighting around there.
Yeah, we can talk about lighting.
And I
as well.
assume the activation of this, of the building, at grade level.
Yes.
I don't know that we ever finished on having the bank facing the park as opposed to on Washington Boulevard.
I think we did have that conversation
We
the
had
last
the
time. and
conversation. I don't think we
specific-
ever resolved it. And now the bank has changed where the ATM machines, I guess, are. That
Okay, well, you can raise that, but I think the last time we had the conversation about the fact that that issue might be resolved for the applicant.
Okay, but I don't think it has been. So
Okay, all right. Transportation, let's just go around the table here. David, do you have any questions on transportation?
No.
Oh, by the way, you don't have to ask any questions, right? Okay. Jim?
The issues I have with transportation, on what is like, it seems like a pretty high parking ratio. 1.7, you're very, very close to the metro station here, and good bus service, number one. I'd like to know more about the design of 10th Street at the corner there. It strikes me that where it makes the L turn, I think that gets designed is going to be really important. I'd like to discuss that. It shouldn't just simply be asphalt on the street with curbs. I think it could be something more than that. It would be safer, more attractive, work with the park. Anyways, we'll talk about that.
Let's talk about it right now. Just answer your question.
Okay. I'd like to, is it possible to have something more like a lunar or a table for that intersection there where the two streets come together? The 10th and was it, where 10th and Irving come together. So you have to sort of go up and go down. That'll even further slow traffic, make it more pedestrian friendly. You have doors for the hotel next door. They're going to be coming out on that. I think all around it should be very, and plus it's for the neighborhood, apparently it's one of the big traffic ways to walk to the subway. So it strikes me that we really want to make that as pedestrian friendly, pedestrian usable as possible, and de-emphasize, keep traffic from going really, make it go really slowly and make it unattractive to drive on. It'll be, you go on it because you need to, not because you want to. So I would very strongly advocate for some sort of design other than simply having curbs and asphalt and stripe crossings. Let's see, the sidewalks would seem to be pretty good. Parking ratio, I think 0.5, as I mentioned, 0.57 seems a bit high. It might be that you don't need those that many. We tend to be overparked around here as it is. Each successive development seems to want less and less parking because they tend not to use everything they have. So, I'd like to have maybe get more feedback on that, or that continue to be looked at. Bike rooms, great to have the bike rooms. Make sure that the bike room, at least one of them, has charging facilities and enough space for cargo bikes, because bikes are getting bigger. More than cars are getting bigger, bikes are getting bigger. And we really are moving toward battery bikes. And that's going to have to factor into your design for fire safety reasons and just for space. Those right now are my big transportation questions or issues.
Okay.
I just
Sure,
support
you wanna-
that, just support the point about the intersection and the raised table. I was also in the Bingham Center, SPRC. There are a number of loading docks down Irving in that this whole area where there are 4 new buildings. And so anything that makes pedestrians a priority for the whole area will be disaster avoiding, because these are two-way streets as well, which is a little crazy to me that could go with a one-way. Channel things a little better, I think, but if it's gonna be two-way, you really need to be, 5 miles an hour.
Oh, and I do like the lay-by, and I do like the now short-term parking where the easements. All that's possible.
So Robert Gibson from Arlington DES. I think that you raised a really good point. As we advance both the Bingham Center project and this, it's something we can look at. And we'll work with the applicant to see what both makes sense and how it ties into the public space that we're looking at. Both of these projects, as led by the sector plan, are doing something important in this space, which is transforming car space into public space with the closure of that Irving Street connection and making it bigger than what we have today. So we'll take that into consideration, sir.
Presume that you don't have any questions. Florence, you don't have any questions either, right?
Nope. I support Jim's comments on reduced parking ratio and also the bike friendliness.
Yeah, in terms of street width, safety, lighting, and that sort of thing, that's first point. We've got a lot of people crossing Washington Boulevard there. How are we going to handle that intersection? Because that's going to be the main crossing place for people in the building, but also in the neighborhoods to the south. Ashton Heights, Lyon Park, to a certain extent, and so forth. And is there a way in which we could, number one,
curves.
Go ahead.
okay, way in which we can construct the crosswalks lighted, particularly at night, with special lighting so you can see pedestrians in the crosswalks. The other thing is you've got the interior streets in there that can be dark and kind of lonely at night, especially back to 10th Road. How are we going to light them and keep them safe and not have problems? And you've got 2 blocks here that are going to have a lot of interior streets that may not be very well activated at night. And this is a chance to try something new, perhaps, with the 2 blocks and light up the interior streets better. Whether this is lighting that goes down the middle of the street and comes down on the sidewalks in the street, or something else, I'm not sure. But also the idea of lighting up the crosswalks so that the drivers at night can see pedestrians in them. On parking, I would not reduce the parking. 2 reasons. Number one, I think you need it. And buildings built on the north side of Wilson Boulevard have been parked up when half leased, which means people coming in beyond that couldn't get a parking spot in the garage. And you've got a lot of commercial activity. Those cars then wind up in the neighborhood. You've got a lot of commercial activity up in Clarendon. You want people to come to Clarendon and be able to park. They can't all come by metro or bus. And so they need some of that on-street parking. And if the people in the apartments buildings take it up, you're pointing the retail in the direction of failure. So basically that covers my basic points.
So definitely agree on making it as pedestrian friendly as that is the entrance from our neighborhood to Clarendon. As far as parking goes, I agree wholeheartedly with having more parking rather than less. It is a concern of Ashton Heights. As we experienced today, there's plenty of apartment dwellers that park in Ashton Heights past the permit area We're also going to have a little bit more stress on parking with Missing Middle. We're also, with all these new buildings coming online, they're all close to the minimum parking, making this assumption that people don't have cars, don't need cars, which, having been president of one of these buildings for a decade, I can tell you, and that was one with a lot of parking in Clarendon. There was always a shortage of parking. There was always demand for parking, and that hasn't changed. It's just a reality of you need to be able to move around. You need to have parking available for both residents, and then of course here we have a lot of retail coming in from here and hotel, and they have to go somewhere. We have not built anywhere public parking spaces and public parking garages that can accommodate people driving to Clarendon. And that's where they again go into the neighborhoods, because that's the only place you can go. It's not not everyone's on the metro, not everyone's on a bus, so it's got to be cars.
Yes. First, following up on parking, a lot of people would be willing to go car free if they have some, options when they need it, such as the car share for the building itself. Other applicants have recently proposed that. I strongly suggest that here. People won't be bringing a car. They might need a car from vacation, but nonetheless, also, again, you can propose, if you propose this amount of parking and there might not be the need for it. I know recently there's a recent application that there's a delta that they wouldn't have to come back if they wanted to change that to like bike parking. And that's my follow on is make the bike parking as great as you can. Make it an amenity. Don't cram everything in there so it feels like a prison for bikes. Make it inviting, make it secure. Ideally, it would have been on the ground floor, but this is a very multi-use building, so I can understand why it's not on the ground floor. It should be convenient and as comfortable as possible. And the last thing is I do have some questions still about the Wilson and Washington intersection, the bike and pedestrian conflicts we have up there. I go through there. It's Boston, Roslyn Boston's sort of east-west spine, and all the bike traffic coming through there going eastbound has to go up onto the sidewalk, and how it's currently configured. You always running in, trying to weave around people. I'd like to know how much more space we're getting, and is it really going to solve the problem, or should we be sort of re-engineering it so that bikes can have their dedicated space and pedestrians their space?
Christine?
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you today. Couple of quick things. In terms of the parking, we're in favor of not reducing the amount of parking and making sure that there's enough parking for electric vehicles. I feel like the trend toward more electric vehicles is not necessarily always being taken into account. Secondly, in terms of pedestrian access, or two things. One, the crosswalk across Washington Boulevard, that it's just a painted crosswalk right now that's at the post office corner. Whether or not that maybe needs an enhancement, like the flashing light signal or something like that with the new additional people that are going to be there. I'm hoping that we're taking a look at that. Also, in terms of pedestrians, some of the other things that I've heard said in the room, making the Irving Street special. Even we're not going to get the transparency that we would normally ask for, or a lot of other things that we typically would want on a great pedestrian street. But I think there are other options. I've just returned from Japan, and they did amazing things with very limited space with plants and structures. And I've got pictures I can share. I think the easiest thing will be for me to just send you all a PDF of a little mural that I've made that has like examples of plants growing in really hard spots. I understand that along the Verizon building, you can't dig down, but there were planting areas that were not more than 4 inches wide, right? Basically raised beds with climbers on there that would do a lot to beautify that wall area and green things up. And to your point about making that the treatment of the street there something more than curb and asphalt, for example. I think there are a lot of good ideas out there that I would encourage us to look at to make it, to Bill's point, make it special for pedestrians, make it green, make it beautifully lit, make it a fabulous space, not just a big old Verizon wall. And I think that the adjoining parcels would be in favor of that too, especially the folks with the hotel. Yeah, the one thing I wonder if we've lost track of is the bike lane study on 10th Street. Better yet, an actual bike lane, but that's one of the things I also want to make sure it doesn't get lost. Thank you.
I don't think we've lost it.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so just for everybody who may not see Sarah Steinberger from Planning Commission is here.
I could force my way in, but that's okay.
Next topic is landscaping.
Oh,
Yes,
there's
sir.
actually one more transportation thing to raise.
Okay.
A question for the applicant, are you, since the bicycles in the basement or in the garage, which is fine, that's a lot of places, it actually gives advantage if you need to expand the bike space, you can take a parking space, which is good. That's easy. Will you be allowing people to bring their bikes through the lobby to go down there, or would they have to go down through the garage ramp?
TBD, we've done both in the past. I think we would probably encourage them to use the ramp and make provisions for that, but would not outlaw them coming into
Okay,
the.
as long as there's that flexibility.
Yes.
Because some people are really more comfortable going through the lobby. For a number of
In this case, there's access to the service elevator from the rear of the loading space as well. So that would probably be where we.
So you get 3 ways of getting.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. The more flexibility, the better.
Okay, so we're moving on to landscaping and sustainability. Mr. Howell, please.
So I want to start out with one question about the 14 feet on the park side. If you could pull up that little area that's going to be next to the Irving Street Park. And I just wondered how much, I know there's a lot of cable infrastructure under there, and I just wondered whether that below grade infrastructure covers that entire width, or is maybe a 6-foot channel and the rest of it is just fill dirt, or what? Do you know anything about any of that?
It is the entirety of that.
The entirety of that is completely.
It's both burdened by an easement and is in fact filled with actual.
So I had a thought about trying to create some connectivity to the park and also a little bit of smooth transition where you might be able to create some 3-sided wedge-shaped planters that at the very far edge are at the same grade as the park, and they get thicker, up to maybe 3 feet, with a couple of places where you can walk through. That gives a little bit more soil volume and also gives some possibilities for a bigger variety of vegetation. So it doesn't look like just a stark tree standing in a box, but actually you have a transition of some grasses or rushes or sedges or shrubs or whatever other various kinds of things that you could put in there, which would connect. I mean, I know that there's already a willingness to work with the park process, and so you want to have something that can anticipate making a connection to that, so it expands the sense of space for everybody. And then also provides a little bit of like, okay, now here's the business side, here's the door to the bank, and here's, you know, this stuff. So it's the end of the park. So that's one thing. Christine mentioned the Verizon walls, and I was going to raise the same thing. A number of way too many years ago that I can't tell you. I worked on a study for the Virginia Department of Transportation with the Research Council they have in Charlottesville. And one of the projects was to ask people whether they would prefer earth berms, concrete walls, or trees as a way to mitigate the sound impact of widening the beltway. None of you are too old enough to remember that the beltway was widened. So this was the Virginia section. And overwhelmingly, the public in those neighborhoods, Annandale's, overwhelmingly, they chose 100 feet of trees, even though the engineers said that's the least effective in reducing sound volume. Perception of sound and absolute sound are two different things. And I know that there's a lot of rumble from the Verizon structure. They're coolers, something that creates some. But I think that, sort of picking up on what Christine said, I think that some kind of wall of planters where the soil volumes don't need to be really great. Again, grasses and sedges and things like that. They can blow in the wind. You're going to have wind whistling through there in that channel between the buildings. It creates an ambient sound that is that actually, it's like white noise. It blocks people's perceptions. Also, there's some areas going to be permanently shady, and I think you could probably find a way to create some moss areas, which is very soothing. So I would suggest to really look into being creative about how to naturalize that channel on Irving. And I think not only will it be visually more pleasant, but I think actually it will change the perception of what it means to walk by that structure. I guess the third thing is that I talked before about the parking lot with the small number of places there. Probably have that, but again, I think don't wall it off unless you think there's a security issue with the cars. Wall it off with vegetation. You have raised beds again, enough to create some opportunities for some vegetation that is visually blocks, but also creates some sound. Natural sounds knock down the urban unnatural sounds, and that's soothing for everybody. Beginning with biophilic theme here. And so just going along with all of these things, though, is I know in dense areas it's tough. We prefer always native plants to this area. Sometimes you have to go with some cultivars of native plants just because of the conditions. Varieties that are hybridized to actually make them a little bit more sustainable. That's not the best, but if that's the next best, that's better than anything that's not native. And it's completely lifeless in terms of our ecosystem. And we find that the native plants will sustain themselves and don't need our care.
Yeah, whatever he said. I like so, Verizon will actually, I don't think it's consistent with the original building. They had the wall at all, but naturalizing. Problem with it the way it is now. Just the strip in front of it. The little parking lot that used to rather than masonry wall. I would say it would be better if you need something there. Well, you know, that you can't- security can see, look in and out. Having it natural would be better than having brick.
Sorry to interrupt, but speak up.
Oh, sure.
People in the chat are having some audio.
So I guess, you know, and certainly whatever's needed is best. Pollinators, native, less lawn, more things. But everything doesn't have to be a canopy tree. There's lots of things that work really well. And good. Thank you.
Sarah.
Hi, I'll associate myself with the comments with regards to the naturalization of the wall. I think that's a lovely addition and a way to kind of add some screen. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to remind everyone to please speak up if you can. They're having a little bit of trouble hearing.
Where's the microphone?
I think these are these things up
If you
here.
can just kind of speak up.
Yeah.
Okay. I fully endorse all of the comments on landscaping and biophilic enhancements, maximum extent possible, et cetera. In my comments, I'll focus a little bit more on the building's mechanicals and in terms of its potential for contribution to carbon emissions. I think the project has paid pretty good attention to sustainability. It seems, from what I can tell, and I have a couple of questions following, that it has a mostly electric HVAC in the 12-story building, electric cooking. It has it's proposing a high Energy Star rating, which is very good. I like the bicycle storage, and it seems that there's certainly been some interest in responding to concern about more trees and better landscaping. My questions, just for clarifications, and then I have a few recommendations. Has the applicant considered, I think this is a recommendation in the county's green building incentive, the preamble to the green building incentive program, have they considered a zero carbon certification, which is a look at how you might get a building project to net zero emissions or net zero energy? It's a certification from the International Living Futures Institute that is based in Seattle. So that's one question. The second is, while the HVAC system looked to me to be largely electric, I'm not really an expert in the area, and it seems that there's some hybrid element to the systems, which means including gas. Is it correct to characterize it as hybrid or mostly electric? And I'm not sure if it's somebody online that's might be answering. And the last question related is, does the applicant plan to install electric cooking also on the retail level if there are restaurants? Kudos for having electric. Anybody able to answer those questions? I also sent them by
Maybe the
email
person
because
who left is probably.
Well, I was gonna say Greg can address some of these and Mike might be able to jump in, but
okay.
I was gonna say, I don't know if you wanna wait for Greg or if you wanna jump in. I can address some of these, but I don't know.
I'm pretty confident it's all electric.
Okay.
And I'm pretty confident we want to keep whatever restaurant might go in there, the flexibility to cook how they want to cook. I know the mechanical system that we're talking about for the office. And I think the same thing for the residential is going to be a VRV. And I know we've used that in our last 3 office buildings downtown that are LEED Platinum. So I know that's kind of maybe an older lead, but it is kind of the most environmentally effective kind of heating system.
Meaning an electric system. I guess I'm less concerned about which level of lead it is, but
Sure,
whether
right.
it is electric. And over time, appliances that are electric, as our grid gets greener over time, it becomes more environmentally correct in terms of emissions. So, okay, that sounds very good. And the zero carbon certification, has that been something the applicant has to? If not, I'd recommend it.
We've done the carbon life cycle analysis on other projects previously. We are not yet at a point where the design is advanced far enough yet to do the
So
analysis.
it's something that you may look into.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, and in terms of some recommendations, I'll go through them very quickly. I provided them in writing because it's, have it on hand. And I know while the applicant has been really diligent in proposing to meet the green building incentive 0.45 FAR level, we urge all developers coming into Arlington to see if they can do better. And it's not what is being required. The incentive program is itself a voluntary program. You're voluntarily engaging in it. But the county, through our community energy plan, has adopted years ago a goal for 2050 to be a carbon neutral community. And 58% of our carbon emissions here in Arlington come from buildings. That's the highest level. So we all have to work together in residences and in new commercial buildings to increasingly move towards net zero or net zero energy in our buildings. So that's, I'll get off my soapbox, but that's why we push. It's not because the Arlington County is requiring it, but we ask all developers to do as much as they can. So my recommendations, and they're in writing, consider conducting a zero carbon certification, consider making the hot water systems electric instead of gas, if possible. I know there's a lot of consideration about, height, but this is a 12-story building, and I think it's possible. It's technically feasible. Consider making the HVAC apparently is fully electric. We commend you on electric cooking in the residences, and I think you said that for the ground floor that would also be the case. I perhaps could have mentioned this under transportation, but we recommend highly to all of the projects to strive to make 50% of the parking spots EV ready. I mean, we are moving fast as a community, as a region, to electric vehicles, and there's going to be more demand for charging in spots for that, and also recommend smart charging technology to maximize the number of vehicles that can be charged while reducing demand on the electric capacity available at the site. And I think that's essentially it. I have a couple other small ones in the writing, but bottom line, I think the building does pretty well on sustainability, and I'm just encouraging you to consider doing better.
Okay, thank you. Landscape and sustainability?
Now, in terms of where the lines run for Verizon under that site, where exactly are they located? How wide are they? And how do they maintain them if they need to upgrade the lines? They be tearing up the landscaping at potentially 10 years after this is completed. All the tree growth goes, and because they've got the easement on the right of way.
Could you call do you have a site survey?
Peter, if you want to pull up, or we can.
Just call it the site plan.
I was going to say, if Matt Perez or someone from Hickok Cole, we also can pull it up. I know folks might be able to do that.
On Irving Street, and by the bank building where those trees are, that used to be the sidewalk. That's where our there, right where those trees are. That's kind of the sidewalk side.
I'm not complaining about where your easement is. I just don't want to see us heavily planted with planters and all kinds of other things, and then it turns out they've got to get all torn up.
That's where I was headed.
Okay. All right.
When you look at how we put the cables in the ground, they're in conduit. So for that specific reason, we can pull out old copper infrastructure and reuse that conduit for fiber structure. And the alternative is there's probably, I do not know this for a fact, but there are probably spare conduits in the ground there now that we can pull through our new cable. And so as long as they're not crunched during construction, we wouldn't have to destroy it. When you get up there to the corner of Washington Boulevard and Irving Street and turn right where everybody's kind of talking, that is a mishmash of us, and Dominion has a huge transmission line that goes under that corner there. When you look at that corner where the sidewalk is, can you zoom in on that a little bit? Yeah, right there. Right where that sidewalk hits and that corner of the building is, between the building and the sidewalk is us, and Dominion Virginia Power has a huge underground
Because
structure.
they've got the substation a couple of blocks over.
You know, what can I can't, you know, that's what's there. I can't change it. So it is what it is.
So a lot of them was redone just a few years ago when they linked all the substations together in the corridor there.
Yeah, I can't, you know, the Dominion, I can't speak to, I don't know their structure, but ours, we usually don't have to tear it up when we put in new cables. If you see us put in new cables, it's usually pulled in through existing underground conduits. In this area, if you go down, can you zoom down toward that end of the building where I took you in the basement there, Peter?
It's more or less.
That right there, that corner of our building is where all of the cables enter the building for basically all of Arlington. That's where they come in, right there. They come down Irving Street from the north and from the south, and they come in right at the corner.
Is that a conduit you can walk through, or is that something that's just more like this? It's just
Well, when you look,
That's a line
Peter, I can, as you, in the building, you can walk there. At the end of the building, what you see is, I don't know, probably 60, 70 round 4-inch conduits come straight in. And they're just conduit, cables coming in those conduits, they go down in this big room. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. It's below grade. I can't
Below
remember
grade.
how far.
Yeah, you're right below grade there. And on top, as soon as you leave the building, it's basically one massive block of concrete with all these tubes.
And Bill, in addition to this, I mean, this is one very specific set of utilities.
Yeah,
As the county, yeah, no.
I'm only talking about Verizon's. There are Dominion, there's Arlington County, they have their traffic, you have the water, you have the sewer, you have all that going through there. I'm only talking about one specific utility, and that's Verizon. There's a lot of other utilities, and they can touch their structures.
And so as we look at transforming some of these rights of way into less car-oriented spaces, they will still maintain their historic nature as rights of way. And there is a huge infrastructure challenge that persists within those rights of way. They are, like you said, the backbone to our communications. They are the way we get water to everything. And so DES and DPR, as we look at the park design, will have to consider those infrastructure challenges in detail. And there are particular rights which utility providers have within rights of way. So they can go pull a permit to put something in there, and it's not by no means a site plan review process. And so there's a number of constituencies within our right of way that very rarely show up and speak in this environment.
Irving Street, who will have jurisdiction over it? Parks and Rec or DES?
Well, I would say that it is likely a joint sort of surface and below, and we'll have to work out that as part of our planning process. That if somebody wanted to put something in the right of way, they would come to the DES counter, submit for a right of way permit, and get their designs approved.
Okay.
So I guess the question is, how do you plan this through the site plan process when you don't know what's underneath it? What can be done with because of rights that exist there?
Well, we're talking about hypothetical future things. I mean, we know what utilities are underneath there. We're only talking about hypotheticals right now, whether.
Well, yeah, and I think that we are specifically talking about a future planning process for the Irving Street work. This process is not actually.
Two quick transportation questions too. One is you've got those 3 dedicated spaces. Will they be dedicated and somehow controlled with the site plan process? Or is that another part of the county? And will the people be ticketed if they're not in the bank? You've got the
chances are that it's going to be a publicly dedicated right of way, so that's usually then becomes the county's responsibility to sign and enforce.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other question is there's additional density and height that can go on that site under the sector plan. How would you deal with the parking if that several additional floors are built? Can you go down another level to create more parking to meet ratio requirements? Or do you wind up with a parking ratio of something like 0.4 or less? Because you build the additional floors, and I assume there'll be
What additional floors are you?
Well, this is one of 4 sites in Clarendon, where through providing community benefits, you can get additional height. The other 3 have been built.
So this process would lock in exactly whatever the county board approves, presumably.
So if the county
Please.
board approved 0.57, that would stay, and if you add 3 more floors, they'd have to build more parking on the site.
Bill, they wouldn't be able to add any additional height to this building. What they're asking for now is what they'll
Already
get
designed it.
forever.
No, but isn't this site one where they can get additional height?
We're
in exchange
proposing
for
that.
community
Yes,
benefits?
yeah, and it's all of the statistics include that, all of the parking statistics, all of the gross floor area we're talking about
So you would,
includes that, yeah.
community benefit would be to reduce the parking? I'm just trying to figure out, if you build the additional floors,
No,
to take
it's,
advantage of this, how do you park those additional floors?
Those additional floors are included. We're not building any additional floors. So right
All
now,
right,
this
so
is what you
they
get.
are asking for the additional height.
yes,
All right, okay.
yeah, yes,
It's in the
yes,
current
yeah, yes.
That's all.
Okay. Any questions on landscaping?
So first comment, I mean, I think it would be a shame if it wasn't a holistic look at the park from literally the wall of the hotel to the wall of the Wells Fargo. So, in a traditional building, you would have this 12-foot sidewalk and your planters and your 4 trees to check that box off. I think it would look weird and be just a wasted use of those extra feet that you have here, not to take advantage of that and to plan to take advantage of that, so that, the tough thing is we don't know what exactly this park is going to be, but what we've seen is that there's, going to be walkways that maybe they're not just straight lines. Maybe it's a, attractive walkway, and then maybe there's berms, and maybe there's sitting areas, and maybe there's, we don't know. But that, I think, should be taken into consideration here, so that the focus is not on, we need these 4 trees and we're going to put them in 3-foot planters. The focus is on looking at that space holistically and saying, what do we need here to make this all work? And to make sure, obviously, you have access to the Wells Fargo and access to the ATM and access that's a direct route to get people in and out, but taking all that into consideration so that, maybe the trees don't need to go right there. Maybe they go in the park, and that's part of the contributions to the park. My question is, on the Verizon side, how far, on some of those pictures, there was the red dotted line that seemed to go not too far around the corner. Does the whole wall, which we would consider to be an ugly wall, the extension wall, the story and a half one that's on that corner of Irving and 10th Road, is that whole wall going to have some sort of ivy or something?
That's being planned. Why don't you talk about that real quick?
Okay, can you call up the diagram again?
This has come up a couple of times, so I think Gary ought to explain what it
Yeah,
is.
can you zoom in on 10th Road? So you just, oops, not that slide. I'll go back to the one you had. And zoom in on that thing where it says on-street parking, below grade parking access, right in there. Right there, yeah. There's along 10th Road now, which is our parking lot, we have a long wall that's, it goes the entire length of the building. There's going to be, JAG is proposing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 trees to go along there. And those are the taller canopy, I think we would call them canopy trees. So when you walk along there, you're going to have, I think that's about 6 feet wide.
The tree plantings.
The tree, 6 feet, and then there's a 6-foot wide sidewalk there. So right now, as the way it's proposed, it's fairly well shielded with trees. And in 5 years, those trees will basically be at the top of the wall. What we're proposing, and we have, you don't see it here, but can you go to the our proposal? We have generators on the, if you don't have it, don't worry about it. If we have generators sitting on top of the building right now, and what we're working with JAG is we're going to screen our generators, and from the parapet wall up, they'll have screening. JAG is looking at what they're going to do on the wall below that and kind of propose something. The historic board and Verizon and JAG proposed something. It didn't go over too well. It was not an acceptable alternative, so we've kind of gone back to the drawing board and started to look at it again. We have not finished that. We'll get that finished, I think, in about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, in that range, to get it able to put back in. I think when's our historic meeting again? 2 weeks?
There's one on Wednesday, we'll have to.
Okay.
Yeah, we would probably go.
Yeah, we won't make one second. And how we're going to propose something from the wall up for our generators. It's a screening wall for sound, and it has sound on the 2 sides of it and a roofed screen so that part of the people can't see into it. And we're going to do some screening on that. I think we're Arlene. You were on this. But we're going to propose what our screening looks like. We haven't come to it.
We had at the first SPRC, if anybody wants to go back and watch that or watch the slides, we saw their first proposal for their screening as part of the site design and architecture.
Yeah, we came in.
And we're still working.
Yeah, we came in with another one that's in the
Still working.
I think to your specific question, the treatment of that one-story building, in theory, will turn the corner to the portion that's on Irving Street.
Irving Street, I'll show you. If you go there, I'll tell you how far down. I think we had it down about 30 feet, something like that. Turn the corner about 30 feet.
It could be the full extent of that one-story.
Whatever you have to, we haven't.
Yeah, so as we talked about, the goal was for Irving to be a nice pedestrian walkway. So, as it is right now, that is just as stark of a wall as you can possibly have on the Irving side. So the goal would be to have something, whether it's art or ivy or different types of shielding, basically, to make that more attractive while we're doing all the other stuff. So it's not this abrupt, here's the new part, here's the old part.
I would associate myself with the comments on the what to do in front of the bank. The landscaping there really needs to be. I just don't. Us trying to sort of force fit some trees into some planters when just a few feet over in the park space, it'd be a much more ideal planting condition and more likely to have healthy trees and less likely to get ripped up. Granted, your concrete encased conduits, I'm sure, will never need to be accessed, but just in case, we'd rather not see the trees be ripped up. So I think we need to look at this holistically. And then also the wall, the only thing I was thinking about is rather than trying to put something at the bottom, at the base, put planters along the parapet wall, let it drape down the side, and then use those same planters for something climbing up the screening wall to sort of make the whole thing green. But just throwing that out there.
Christine?
I love the draping the plants down idea, Erin. Nice job. I took the liberty of sending you all an email that gives you access to a mural document that has photos from the trip, and it includes screening that we saw for just hiding ugly things. It has great examples of how a tree pit can be not just a tree pit, but has lots of other plantings in it, how we can create greenery in a very small space, on buildings, et cetera, et cetera. So I just thank you for letting me invade your email momentarily and take a look at that. And hopefully that will provide some inspiration.
Thank you. David, last question on this topic?
Thank you. So this is related to landscape, but it's also about the facade and the architecture. The green building incentive policy requires, as part of bonus 8 feet to 36 feet of pedestrian-friendly land. This is a wonderful building design. 8 to 36 is not the case. And Arlington, even though we're starting to move in this direction, Arlington is not in the forefront, as you might like to think it is. New York requires 0 to 100. So, number one, ground floor, 0 to 8 should be bird-friendly class. You've got a lot of vegetation here. You don't want, if you're going to have a nice little park area, you don't want little carcasses all over the place. Ethical reasons and also aesthetic reasons. But also the upper levels where you have the vegetation setbacks. Doesn't hurt with the next 12 feet. The additional expense doing that when you design it into the almost negligible. Materials costs in general. Well worth not having that be a problem. Tenants, as well as for Arlington's private. If you look at a website called Birdcast, now in the beginning of June, every night you'll see weather radar documentation of the migrating birds that are flying over Arlington, South America and the Caribbean to the eastern part of the United States and Canada. You'll see multiple millions just over Arlington County in one night. They all have to stop before dawn, gorge themselves to get the energy to fly another 100 miles the next day. And when they do that, and they're in the little trees, in the shrubs, eating insect larvae that are now coming out because it's spring, and they turn around and they see another branch over there, and they head over there, oh, it's a reflection. Too bad. You don't want that.
Right?
Exactly.
So this sounds better
90%
from
of
him than it does when it comes to planning commission.
Which we raised at the
Right, and so
Americana
this was
site
the last,
week.
I'll just say that this was something that came up in planning commission. It
And will
needs to
come
be
up
zero.
at every one of our meetings.
Penn Place is doing all of the helix. All of the helix, because it's got vegetation inside it now. And up to 50 feet, and all the terraces, and everything where there are contours and there's woodland stream that comes up to higher level. This is what cities do. Universities are doing it on their campuses. Yale's about to issue a study for their own purposes, but also with 6 case studies in this report about bird collisions and architecture. And in addition to San Francisco, Portland, New York, Minneapolis, Arlington is one of the case studies. If you think it's tough, all of the Long Bridge Aquatic Center building in Arlington, public building, every bit of glass is bird-friendly glass. It's not frivolous and it's not unimportant. It's very doable. It's just a matter of making a good decision at the beginning. It's not an expensive thing to do. So I would encourage you to really think about this. It's a wonderful building. You don't want to spoil it. And you don't want one of the best assets, which is that wonderful organic contour, to be tarnished by something that is, in this time of, last summer, the United Nations had a summit on biodiversity and wildlife loss. It's happened in the last 50 years. The United States is a co-signer along. This is a real thing. It sometimes gets overshadowed by climate change, but they're very close to the beginning of ecological health.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we're a little bit behind schedule now. And when we get to our next 2 topics, I want to make sure that we still have time for public comment. So if you want to just align yourself, just simply say you align yourself, and let's, got to be able to kind of wrap this up on time.
Align.
Thank you. Thank you. Community benefits. Do you have any community benefits? No, Jim?
No, but we do want to know about affordable housing component, and we would like to see at least some units on site, even if it continues with a contribution. So it's close to subways, close to supermarkets, when sites have affordable on site.
Sarah?
A line.
Line? Bill?
I think one of the community benefits, in addition also for the contributions towards the area there where the county owns a fair amount of land there on 10th Street. And there really is no open space park in Clarendon. The Central Park in Clarendon. You can sit up there, but it's a lot of traffic. So it would be nice to have a park where you could have ball courts, children, toddler, children's play area, that sort of thing. The neighborhood's put together a letter about a year and a half ago detailing how this might be done. And this would be a good place to get a contribution from this building towards making sure that happens. And it would be a real benefit for the people that live in it, particularly if they have children, or they're retired, that sort of thing.
Aligned on that, I mean, that's Ashland High's priority is 10th Street Park. Since this involves the Verizon building, which obviously abuts what is potentially the space, then that would be what we would most want to see in addition to the affordable housing on site.
And Christine says she aligns on affordable housing. Aaron? On-site affordable?
Yeah. Well, I just want to align with the Civic Association saying that the park in that space is a number one priority for, I think, everybody all around. Get the fire station out of there, move it across the street, buy that land, make a plan, get it done. We need that green space. We're not going to get any more green space.
Okay. And I am going to wholeheartedly align. I know I don't speak very much, but I wholeheartedly align with on-site affordable housing. To say that it needs to be at every development. So Bernie, we saw that you want to give public comment. Doris is also going to give public comment. One last substantive area for discussion: construction and phasing, including possible construction maps. Oh, Christina,
were you calling me on me at this time or later?
We'll call on you at the end.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just got 4 projects that are going to be happening almost simultaneously. So I don't think it's a total no-brainer about how to make all those happen in some coordinated way. So I hope that's on our results.
Yeah.
I have no problem with the phasing that you're doing, but to DES, DPR, really need to move ahead on that Irving Street Park and get that figured out while all this construction is going on, so we don't have to go back and redo things. They both these projects have a huge interest in getting that done and done right up front. So the county really has to step up and put this as a high priority to get it done as part of all the things that are happening here.
There.
No, I mean, glad we had the conversation, laying out our expectation with regards to on-site affordable. I'm, pleased with where the project is headed. I think there's been some good progress since the first SPRC, and I'm content.
Thank you. No comment. Okay. Bill, construction phasing and construction routes.
I just think, I agree with Jim that the county's got to figure this out and make sure it goes through the vision. You're going to have several blocks under construction there. You're widening Wilson Boulevard. You've got a potential. That's if it's. I'm not sure what's going to be built first. So it's going to be a high-end well, and you want that to work and not get off to the wrong start.
I think the having to have the Wells Fargo built first does add a lot of complexity to that, just because the timing of all these buildings, and same concern of traffic, basically, making sure that these all close.
Yeah, coordination between the county and the different developers is going to be key. I'm actually thinking that the Wells Fargo being phase one is actually be good because it will actually sort of maintain a connection along Irving from 10th Street up to Washington Boulevard. So that's, I think it's sort of, it's going to be in our favor that gets built first, and then because everything else around it's going to be look like a war zone for a while.
I don't see anybody with their hand raised online, so just kind of now moving on to wrap-up comments, something that you wanted to say, but it didn't fit into one of our boxes or one of our buckets. I will start with, I don't know how this fits. I know I've raised this comment with a project down here in Courthouse, but I do feel concerned around wind. And I think we've kind of raised this issue as when we start having a lot of, taller buildings, like how we're sometimes accounting for the way that wind moves through. I still remain concerned for some of the stuff that's going on down in Courthouse because like even the slightest bit of wind really does cause a lot of disruption for, like, I'd say user experience, but that's not obviously the term that we are using around this table. But that I just, kind of want to be thoughtful of that. And I don't know if that's a landscaping issue or if there's something else that we can do, because if we do have several buildings up here in this space, wind may be a factor. Anybody else with any other comments or thoughts? Or I don't think it requires a response. So I'm just kind of raising it as a
good for us to think about.
Yeah. Sarah.
I will recognize the fact that I gave my wrap-up comment. We were talking about construction. I apologize for that. Sorry, I have a 9-month-old. With regards to construction, it is obviously a complicated site and a lot of pedestrian traffic. So I do think consider of that, as others have said. So now you've got my wrap-up comment and my construction comment, and I'm done. Great.
Any other wrap-up comments? Anything that didn't fit into one of our boxes?
It's a great project.
Yeah.
Tremendously improved, and I'm really excited to see it move forward.
Yeah. Tremendous for Jim because of the ATM. All right, so next steps, Peter already mentioned to everybody. Oh, yes, next steps, Peter mentioned to everybody. It's coming to PC and TBD.
TBD, yes.
Planning Commission and the County Board to be determined. So we have two public commenters this evening, 2 minutes apiece. Why don't we start with Doris and then we will go to Bernie. Doris, are you ready?
Yes, I think so. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you so much. Feel free to start.
Okay, because I just unmuted. Okay, so my name is Doris Ray, and I am a member of the Disability Advisory Commission. I also work at the Independence Center of Northern Virginia, which is a community resource center run by and for people with disabilities, and located here in Arlington. And actually, we used to be located at 3100 Clarendon Boulevard, right across from this site. And we're there for 10 years, so I know it well. And I'm glad to see that you're going to keep my bank branch there. There are a few things that I did want to mention. Among community benefits, I think it's very important that there be affordable housing and on-site there because of the prime location here and its accessibility to the Metro Rail system and other bus routes that connect people in Arlington. And so it's an important site for affordable housing. I don't know that I've heard any number or whether there's a specific plan or whether it's going to be a contribution, but I'm hoping there will be on site. The other thing is 238 units. I'm wondering how many of those will be fully accessible type A units. I'm assuming that all units are going to be Fair Housing Act accessible, but for type A units, I'd like to know how many, if you know that at this time. The other thing that I think is really important, both for transportation and circulation, but also for as a community benefit, is that the streets, the sidewalks, the intersections are pretty old in that area. And I don't know whether the applicant is going to help or whether the county is going to be redoing those intersections. I know that there's another building, I hope I'm correct about this, going up where the Silver Diner is.
So Doris, we're out of time. We're actually over time for your comment. Did you want to go ahead and submit some written comments to Peter if you have some additional comments to share?
Okay, can I end my sentence?
Sure.
Okay. I think that there needs to be a whole-scale improvement of the sidewalks and intersections to make them fully accessible both for the residents and visitors to the retail as well as the entire community. And I am concerned about, with all the buildings going up and such, what that's going to do to the very nature of the neighborhood. So I'll put the rest in writing. But please send me an email to whom I'm supposed to send this.
I'll do.
Peter will send you an email. Hey, Bernie.
Okay, hi there. I have spoken to you about this last meeting, and I sent you a lot of long messages of my complaints about this. This project basically has virtually no community benefits. I mean, just the usual thing. And to get increased heights, the Clarendon second plan says that increased heights and density will be for extraordinary community benefits, including but not limited to building preservation, affordable housing, green building, etc. Well, there's no lead platinum here. There's no, there's nothing that'll help the climate. No milkweed being proposed to be planted. Nothing. But even worse, this building is going to block if it's supposed to be 110 feet. They want to increase it to 128 feet. That is going to block the view of the Olmsted building from the Virginia Square sector along Wilson Boulevard. This was discussed in the Long Range Planning Committee meeting. Basically, this is in the long range in the Virginia sector plan to maintain that height, and specifically it should not be above 110 feet. So here we are, no extraordinary community benefits. They're getting they want the height. Don't give it, because you're going to block the view from Wilson Boulevard in the sector plan all the way from Virginia. We have that view all the way from the Virginia Square Metro Station. You just don't do it. Second thing, I mentioned my comment. They didn't submit a landscape plan that had any of the shrubs or the small vegetation, perennials, or ground covers. Well, I wrote that in. Nothing has come back. They didn't change it. So I don't know if there's going to be any milkweed. The county board's going to hear from me about this, and maybe they'll make some comment. But this is just not the way to do planning, and certainly not the way to get an additional height, which is going to block the view of the Olmsted building. It's really one of the worst projects you can see. Whether it's bird-friendly grass or something, that's irrelevant. There's virtually no open space on the ground level. All that open space, the park is coming out of the Silver Diner site, not of theirs. They're putting some trees on the sidewalk, and that is it. So this is the kind of project you help the planning commission when you meet. You'll see this. I'll send you the comments again that I sent. I've already read it. You've probably misread it, but I sent it to some of you.
I will.
And that's it.
We're done. Thank you.
Thank you. So this concludes our SPRC, our second and final SPRC for the Wells Fargo Verizon site. Thank you guys so much for participating. Thank you for all your comments. Thank you for staff for putting together this meeting. If you have anything else you'd like to raise, any additional comments or questions, please feel free to email Peter Schultz directly. Okay.
I just emailed Doris so that she has my heart.
Wonderful. P. Schultz at Arlington, Virginia, at arlingtonva.us. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Take good care of yourselves.